In 1837, the small Ohio town of Sprucevale was all abuzz. Esther Hale had found the man of her dreams, and he asked her to marry him. The wedding and reception were all planned out, and finally the wedding day arrived. Esther spent most of that morning happily prancing around in her new wedding dress. This was to be the happiest day of her life, a day that she had looked forward to since she was a child. But what started as a bright, happy day turned dark and gloomy. Today we learn the tale of Esther Hale, the bride at the bridge, a tale that is both tragic and haunting. So if you're curious, let's take a walk through history. All that's left of Sprucevale is an old grist mill. This was the Hamilton Mill, and the remains of 2 locks on the Sandy and Beaver Canal. There are several versions of the tale of Esther Hale, many of which blend the tale with the legend of Gretchen's Lock, which takes place about a half mile down that way. When this community was alive and thriving, Esther Hale was to be married. The book Spooky Ohio by Chris Woodyard describes this story wonderfully. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. Esther Hale had a small cottage near the Hamilton Mill by the creek, and Esther fell in love with a local man and was engaged to be married one summer afternoon. So on the morning of August 12th, 1837, Esther hummed happily to herself as she put on her white wedding dress and veil. It was her wedding day. The table in the parlor was decorated with flowers and vines. The cake in the kitchen was covered with cheesecloth to keep off the flies. The wedding was set for 10 in the morning, but by 10:30 the groom had not arrived, and guests and parson were beginning to fidget. And at 12:30 they climbed into their wagons and drove away. The messenger Esther sent could find no trace of the bridegroom. Esther's love was never seen in the area again, but his deserted cabin and the cold ashes in the stove indicated that he had decided he didn't want to marry Esther after all. Esther was forced to face reality. He wasn't coming. And so, heartbroken, Esther Hale quietly walked into her cabin, locked the door, and withdrew from the world. When Esther's friends came to help her to bed, Esther shook her head, tears running down her face. Finally, they left her alone in the dark by the window in the parlor. When they returned the next morning, the curtains were drawn as if for a funeral, and they were never opened again in Esther Hale's lifetime. Several days later, when Esther still had not been seen in town, friends again went out to check on her. They found the sullen Esther amid the wedding decorations, still dressed in her wedding gown. Her friends sat with her and urged her to change her clothes and come outside. And Esther politely refused and asked her friends to leave. Reluctantly, they obliged. From time to time, friends would stop by to check on Esther. They would always find her alone, sitting among her now yellowing decorations. And while her guests were sometimes able to get Esther to eat a little, they were unsuccessful in their attempts to get her to remove her wedding dress. All summer, Esther moved like a ghost through the house. Beetles tunneled through the cake. The wedding flowers withered under the spider webs in the parlor. Summer turned to fall, and then to the inevitable winter. And the winds of December arrived in the little town of Sprucevale. A neighbor noticed that the door to Esther's house was open, banging back and forth in the December wind. He told the sheriff and a doctor, and the 2 men took a party to the dark house. Snow had drifted throughout the house like a white shroud. Esther was slumped over the parlor windowsill. Her veil was still over her face. Someone held up a lantern as the doctor drew back the shredded lace. Esther had been dead for several weeks, and when they saw the horror beneath, they silently covered her over again. She was buried so, shrouded in her wedding dress. The canal traffic along the Beaver Creek faded, and the town along the locks died out. Sprucevale was no more. All that remains are the walls of this old mill, and a few of the canal locks, and quite possibly, Esther remains as well. Some refer to her as the Hambleton Mill Ghost. Residents claim Esther causes their cars to shut off as they drive by the mill. One Christmas, a local resident was out looking at Christmas lights with her mother. She told her mother that the car was going to shut off as they passed the mill. Her mother didn't believe her, but as they came down the hill and past the mill, the car shut right off. She told her mother there are hundreds of hills out here, but the car only shuts off on this one spot. Another resident who enjoys taking people on horseback rides tells ghost stories of the area, especially the tale about this ghost. One August night, she took a group of riders out on the trail. It was a clear night, but a mysterious fog rose from the creek up the horses' legs. As they passed the mill and rode onto the bridge, the last man in line said he felt a cold force pulling on his sweatshirt. No one in the group could see anything grabbing at him. But when they reached the safety of the barn, the hood of his sweatshirt was torn. Many people have seen Esther's spirit wandering along the creek, still wearing her white wedding dress. Most witnesses say they have seen her on the bridge that crosses the creek during the anniversary of her wedding. She seems to be looking withered and very sad, and sometimes crying. However, there is a legend that says she's looking for another young woman to take her place, mourning her lost lover for eternity. They say if the ghost of Esther touches you, she will become a beautiful young woman again, and you will wither and die and take her place waiting for her long-lost love. Thank you for watching today, folks. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, click the notification bell, comment, and share this video. And we'll see you next time as we explore more curious history. Take care.